All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into chapter 6. We are going to talk about strategic management this week on the video lecture. Kind of breaking down really a lot of some of the parts that we talked about in chapter 5 as regards to planning. We'll go a little bit more in depth here with some strategic management. So we'll talk about just some different, strategies, some different studies out there, some different research out there that kind of shows and kind of really shows, what managers are thinking about or looking at when it comes to making choices within their organizations. This week, we have 7 learning objectives, as you can see there on our screen. 7 learning objectives this week's meaning it is a 21 question project for you all this week. Um, a little bit longer than the past couple of ones, but still fairly manageable. Looking here at the managing you portion here, your personal brand, it requires a strategy. So, when we talk about personal brands, we're kind of in this era of social media influencing, and really individuals putting themselves out there on numerous platforms and gaining views and gaining subscribers from all across the world, not just in your local town or local city. It's one of those things where it's definitely been a unique trend that's happened in the past 5 years, and a lot of what those individuals do is branding, right? They brand themselves. They have certain belief systems, values that people gravitate towards, and it really becomes a part of what they are, what they do. And even though a lot of us aren't going to grow up to become social media influencers, a personal brand is something that you yourself can develop, not for social media gain, but you can actually gain it for your for job interviews, right? For the people that you work with, going into an interview or working on a team, it's a chance to kind of show what your value systems are, what your beliefs are, what is your core message of who you are, as a worker. So personal branding, while we may be associated more with influencers, social media, it's something that as, and I'll say common people, but it's something as regular people can work on and can actually benefit from as it turns to advancing your career. So understanding that and then casting yourself in a positive light can be very, very valuable to you. So today we're going to take a look at strategic positioning and levels of strategies. So we first start with strategic positioning. And strategic positioning, what it is it attempts to achieve sustainable competitive advantages by preserving what is distinct about a company. It is based on the principles that strategy is the creation of a unique and valuable position, requires trade-offs in competing, and involves creating a fit among activities. There are 3 levels of strategy: corporate, business level, and functional. Okay, so strategic positioning, every single individual company or organization, corporation will try to position themselves strategically. And think about some of the different organizations and businesses out there, and think about how you can maybe apply this definition to some of these businesses. So you know before there was all of these dollar stores, example would be Dollar General. They for a while had a unique and valuable position. Okay, it was Dollar General, right? All of the stuff in there was cheap. It was, products that, could be acquired for not a lot of money. However, the trade offs in creating that position was oftentimes the products weren't all that high of quality, right? You weren't going in there for, a Gucci purse in a Dollar General, right? There's too much luxury. Dollar General would have never made it in business had they tried to sell Gucci or Louis Vuitton in their store at a dollar. So their trade off is dealing in high quality products. They dealt in cheap priced goods. And then it created then a step further here with your strategic positioning strategy. It was creating a fit among the activities. So, and we think about that. We think about, Dollar General store layout and, what it looks like, what it feels like going in to the store, right? You walk into a Dollar General and, you immediately, from the vibe of the store, understand that, this is not exactly you know, a luxury place, right? And oftentimes, you're going to have, people probably not spending hours on end in a Dollar General looking for what they need, right? It was definitely, the fit of the company, the strategic position was, goods that can be, sought quickly, acquired quickly, and then, transitioning that customer on. So, that's an example, right? And it always helps to kind of put these definitions, put these concepts into practice and into examples out there in the real world. So that's an example just offhand of strategic positioning. So we're also going to talk about the levels of strategy, and then we will also discuss how does strategic management work for small as well as large firms. So strategic positioning and its principles. So strategic positioning attempts to achieve sustainable competitive advantage by preserving what is distinct about a company, right? Now let's go back to this Dollar General position for a minute. Dollar General has not exactly done a superior job of establishing that strategic position in their market, right? There are a lot of competitors to Dollar General now that in some people's eyes have actually overtaken them, right? So Dollar General's, strategic positioning is actually an example of, a strategic position gone wrong. So, strategy is a creation of a unique and valuable position. So, first part, few needs but many customers. So strategic position can be derived from serving the few needs of many customers. So example, Jiffy Lube only provides lubricants, but it provides them to all kinds of people with all kinds of motor vehicles. So they focus on, you know, very singular needs of the people, but they can serve a lot of people. Then we have broad needs and few customers. So with broad needs and few customers, a strategic position may be based on serving the broad needs of just a few customers. For example, wealth management and investment advisory firm Bessemer Trust, focuses exclusively on high net worth clients. Okay, so they may have, in order to invest with this company, they may have a $2 million minimum to begin investing with that company. Okay, that'd be an example of. Now there are a lot of millionaires out there, and investments. There's a wide variety of investment products you can purchase, so there's a very broad need. However, the customers are small and few in general. And, that's how we get an example of a trust or, financial managers. All right. And then we have broad needs and many customers. So strategy may be oriented towards serving the broad needs of many customers. So an example, national movie theater operator Carmike Cinemas operates only in cities with populations of fewer than 200,000 people. Okay, so that'd be an example of broad needs and still quite a few customers. Okay. However, strategy does require trade-offs, right? So it is one of those things where you simply cannot have it all. So, a company must choose not only what strategy to follow, but what strategy not to follow. So, for example, getting all sorts of notifications. For example, Neutrogena soap points out Porter is positioned as more of a medicinal product than as a cleaning agent. So, in achieving this narrow positioning, the company gives its sales based on deodorizing, gives up a large volume, accordingly, gives up some manufacturing efficiencies. So, the narrower your focus, in a company, so just like Neutrogena here, as they narrow their focus, then it becomes a little bit less efficient to manufacture. So the broader customer base you can serve, the easier it is to manufacture a product. However, as soon as you start to narrow your products it can become a little bit more difficult as a company, especially in the cost area. That's why you see a lot of times specialty items costing more. All right, and then finally, last but not least, the fit. All right, so the fit has to do with the ways a company's activities interact and reinforce one another. So, for example, a mutual fund such as Vanguard Group follows a low cost strategy and aligns its activities accordingly, distributing funds directly to consumers and minimizing portfolio turnover. Okay, so everything that a company does has to match up and reinforce products. So, Vanguard's a great example of this where their mutual funds, they are built to serve a wide base of customers and they don't believe in charging a lot of fees. So they want to minimize the portfolio turnover within their funds because minimizing portfolio turnover leads to lower fees, not as many trades happening within the fund, right? So that's an example of Vanguard doing what they've set out to do and really trying to make it fit within the company. All right, and then we have our levels of strategy. So our levels of strategy, and you can take a look here on page 211 is where you'll see it, figure 6-1. At the very tip top, we have corporate level strategy, and corporate level strategy focuses on the organization as the whole. So, these are the executives at the most senior levels, okay, sometimes referred to as what we call the C-suite, all right? They really conduct this type of strategic planning, those executives. So this analysis really, it answers questions such as what business are we in, what products and services should we offer, what can we go out and acquire, what joint ventures can we maybe consider as we go along here, right? So these are really all of the super high level questions that businesses must answer when determining the direction of the business. And that all happens at the corporate level strategy. And then we have the business level strategy. So the business level strategy focuses on individual business units or product service lines. So senior managers below the C-suite are typically responsible for this level of strategy. So some issues, flow from decisions made at the corporate level involve considerations such as how much to spend on marketing, new product development, product expansion or contraction, facilities expansion or reduction, equipment pricing, other employee development, right? So this is all happening at the business strategy level, and it's really kind of that buffer agent between the C-suite, the executive vice presidents of the company, and then just your everyday frontline managers. And then last but not least, we have the functional strategy level, the very bottom there. The functional strategy level, what it does is it applies to the key functional departments or units within the business. All right. Functional managers are more focused on the tactical issues of the company. So, for example, Dunkin', formerly Dunkin' Donuts, decision to offer Beyond Sausage sandwiches would require 3 related functional strategies. So marketing managers would first need to decide how to market the new sandwich. Store managers would then need to determine how best to make them with the existing equipment in the restaurant. And then finally, operations managers would need to resolve the logistics for transporting the plant-based sausages to each location, right? So this is an example. So that really kind of sums up there the 3 levels of strategy, and it's really kind of, as we've talked about, some of the different levels of management too. It's very 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 much top down, where individuals from the highest levels, the highest ranks of the corporation, kind of formulate the plan, and then it becomes on the middle managers and the first line managers to then execute said plan. So that becomes one of those things where communication is such a key amongst these strategies, to where it actually gets implemented properly. And again, here is an example of the 3 levels of strategy. So these are just some examples of corporate level, so the C-suite, and then you've got the business level suite. So that could be the services unit, the retail unit, and the electrical components unit. And then on third rung there, you've got finance, operations, marketing, communication, and then human resources. So very, very much a top-down example, very much a top-down strategy. So does strategic management work well, does strategic management work for small as well as large firms? So evidence reveals that the use of strategic management techniques and processes associated with increased small business performance. Surprisingly, however, many small business owners do not engage in strategic planning. So it's one of those where strategic planning, abiding by it, can be very effective for small business managers, but for whatever reason, small business managers may not have necessarily the expertise, the experience. They may not have, the employees or the resources necessary to be able to execute, a strategic plan, or even really have the time to come up with a strategic plan. So even though the research and the data out there tells us that, strategic planning at the small business level is very effective, it doesn't necessarily, however, always get done, and it's not because small business owners don't wish to be more profitable or, more operationally sound. It's simply that, they may not have the resources to be able to execute and formulate a plan when it all comes together. All right, so we kind of shift gears here a little bit. We talk about the strategic management process. So this figure here that you see on our slideshow here is also recreated on our book on page 213. So we have our strategic management process. So we have our 5 steps. So step 1, establish the mission, the vision, and the value statement of a company. Then step 2, assess our current reality of the situation. Step 3, formulate corporate and business functional strategies. 4, strategic implementation. And then 5, maintain strategic control. And then if there are any feedback, or when any feedback may come and there are revisions needed, that revision comes based totally off of that feedback. So as we take a look here a little bit more in depth with those, establish the mission. So the mission statement expresses the organization's reason for being. Employee involvement when developing the mission statement may remedy these faults. As research indicates, the greater involvement, the better the firm's financial performance. Step 2, assess the current reality. So do a current reality assessment or organizational assessment to look at where the organization stands and see what is working and what could be different in order to maximize efficiency and effectiveness in achieving the organization's mission. Step 3, formulate corporate, business, and functional plans, or strategies, The next step here is to translate the broad mission and vision statements into a corporate strategy, which, after the assessment of the current reality, explains how the organization's mission is to be accomplished. And then finally, strategy formulation is the process of choosing among different strategies and altering them to best fit the organization's needs. And then 4, strategic implementation, we execute the strategy. So putting strategic plans into effect is strategy implementation. Strategy planning isn't effective, of course, unless it can be translated into lower level plans within the organization. And then finally, strategic management, the feedback loop. So this is where strategic control consists of monitoring the execution and making adjustments if necessary. And then, with that feedback, if we notice something going wrong, then that's where we take our corrective action. Okay, so this is the process by which we go through in our strategic management process. All right, so when we assess our current reality, all right, so that's third step in our process, our second step in that current process. There are a few different ways that we can assess our current reality. And the first one that we can take a look at is what we call SWOT analysis, right? And the SWOT analysis that we take a look at is always a good first step at gaining insight into whether or not a company has a competitive advantage. So, SWOT analysis, a company assesses its strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's what we call a SWOT analysis. And in the internal environment, so that's an analysis of internal strengths and weaknesses. And then the external environment, which is analysis of external opportunities and threats. So those are the two parts the SWOT analysis is divvied into. So that internal environment and then those external opportunities. So how often should a SWOT analysis be conducted? So the answer is frequently in today's competitive environment. In fact, recent study found that organizations should compare their internal and external environments every 18 months or less. So every, at the latest, a year and a half is when you are doing, you are turning this over. So in that internal environment, so it's the organizational strengths, so the skills and capabilities that give the organization special competencies and a competitive advantage in executing strategies in pursuit of its vision. And then organizational weaknesses, the drawbacks that hinder an organization in executing in the pursuit of its vision. Then the external environment, analysis of external opportunities and threats. So organizational opportunities. So environmental factors that the organization may exploit for competitive advantage. And then the organizational threats, which are environmental factors that hinder an organization's achieving a competitive advantage. Okay. So, it's not just good to have your own company, your own business, right, for lack of a better term. You also have to worry about the externals and how, if we go outside the organization, taking a look outside the organization, what is available to us, but then also, what if, for Walmart, what if Target is really doing some excellent work within their company, and that external, that organizational threat could negate some of the good things that we're doing, right? So we have to kind of be aware of our external environment as well. All right, slide 13 here just takes a look at another summarization of the SWOT analysis. All right, the next endeavor in the assessing the current realities is the VRIO, the Vero competitive Vero to assess competitive potential. So Vero stands for value, rarity, imitability, and organization. So that's what it stands for. The graph here the figure here in 6.4 and on page 219 in our book probably does the best example or the best way of kind of organizing our thoughts here. So the first thing that you have to start with, competitive strategic advantage, is by asking the first thing, is it valuable? Okay. If the answer is no, you have a competitive disadvantage. Okay. But if the idea is valuable, then we move on to rarities. All right. So then is it rare? Okay. Meaning, do you have the ability to kind of corner the market, or are the resources needed to produce a product or business, are they rare? Okay. If they aren't rare, you are about equal competitively. However, if you are in that rare category, you move on to the imitation part. So is it costly to imitate? Okay. So if it's not costly to imitate, you have a temporary competitive advantage. Okay. However, if it is very costly to imitate this example, the firm is finally, organized to exploit the value, the rarity, and the imitation. Okay. If you're not organized and ready to do it, then you have an unexploited competitive advantage. However, if you give a yes to all four of these, you have a sustainable competitive advantage within the marketplace. And it is very, very difficult to achieve sustainable competitive advantage in the marketplace. you know, you may have something valuable, you may have something really rare, but if you're not organized, to exploit the value, the rarity, and that lack of imitation, it's difficult, to sustain and keep up on. Netflix is a great example of this, where when they went to streaming, they were exceptionally valuable. At the time, they were rare. They were the only game in town in terms of streaming. And to be honest with you, streaming is very costly to imitate. If you actually do the research right now, a lot of companies are actually losing money on their streaming platforms. So, Netflix, even though we see them maybe weakening, they've still been able to maintain this competitive advantage through their streaming abilities, because they've been the ones that have been able to operate at a profit, where you see all of these other streaming platforms not yet able to operate at a profit. So, and right now, while Netflix, some are worried, they are organized. They have exploited a lot of value, their rarity and their, fact that they, haven't been, cheaply imitated, right? So they have probably built a temporary competitive advantage, but we're going on, almost a 15-year run of dominance for Netflix, now, and it's been a, they've been kind of the leader now, certainly for the last 15 years or so. So they've been very, very competitive and very, very sustainably competitive in this example, that we use. Forecasting and predicting the future. So forecast is a prediction of the vision or prediction of the future. So we forecast, sales, expenses, economic conditions, so on and so forth, political, elections, things of that nature. So forecasting, trying to predict the future, even though we probably don't always hit it, and honestly, we very rarely hit it, is something that is popular amongst businesses. Then we have trend analysis. So trend analysis is a hypothetical extension of a past series of events into the future. The basic assumption is that the picture of the present can be projected into the future. So, if you're a sports team that has been on a winning streak and your players are continuously healthy, you could be what's called trending in the right direction, meaning, hypothetically, if the team is, gelling, winning games, the trend analysis of that team would be positive going into the future of, their future games coming up. So that's an example of that. Contingency planning, predicting alternative futures. So with contingency planning, okay, you are always planning for the unknown or what may come up, right? And you have to have these contingency plans in place, just because, you never know how the business world, the economic systems, your competitors, you never know exactly how they're going to move, right? And with that, it then becomes very, very important to have contingencies put in place to be successful and to ultimately execute and stay afloat or stay, sustainably competitive ahead. So contingency planning, very, very important, to plan for those alternative futures. All right, then we have benchmarking. So benchmarking is a process by which a company compares its performance with that of a high-performing organization. So research has found that benchmarking is a valuable tool to improve goal performance in a variety of industrial sectors. These include investment firms, local governments, and airlines. All right, establishing corporate level strategy. So the next part here that we're going to take a look at of taking a look at corporate level strategies. So we have corporate level strategies. So we have the growth strategy, the sustainability strategy, or defensive strategies. We also have the Boston Consulting Group, the BCG matrix, and diversification considerations that are used to formulate these corporate strategies. So we have here the growth strategy. So Lululemon is an example here, as you can kind of read up, pause the video here and read up on Lululemon and their corporate strategy. But as we look down here to more of our terms, the growth strategy. So growth strategy is a grand strategy that involves expansion, as in sales revenue, market share. And when we say market share, we mean what percentage of, in this case, Lululemon, what percentage of the apparel market, the athleisure wear market do we have, the number of employees or number of customers, or for nonprofits, clients served. Often a growth strategy takes the form of an innovation strategy by growing market share or profits by innovating improvements in products or services, as in using an e-business approach to calculatedly disseminating information. Then we have the stability strategy. So stability strategy is the grand strategy that involves little or no significant change. And then a defensive strategy or a retrenchment strategy is a grand strategy that involves reduction of an organization's efforts. All right. And all of these organization strategies can take place in different times of economic situation. So you might see yourself in a growth strategy when the economy is in a recovery or a boom, right, where things are starting to pick up and the business itself is doing well. You may hear talk of stability when potentially a recession or a slowing of economic growth is on the horizon, and then you could get defensive in terms of a recession hitting or a bad earnings report or loss in subscribers, so on and so forth. So all three of these are likely utilized by major companies in the marketplace. It's just knowing when to pull out each strategy. All right, and then we have the Boston Consulting Group here, the BCG matrix. And this is always an interesting matrix. So you have four boxes, all right, and you have on the y-axis you have the market growth rate. So if it's a high growth rate, obviously you follow that. You follow the arrow up, and if it's a low growth rate, you follow the arrow down there towards the intercept with the x-axis. And then we have the market share, right? So with the market share, what we're talking market share is how much control do you have over the industry. And obviously the higher market share you have, the more the better it is for you, because you're more recognizable. People are buying in your in your in your company, and then that's obviously leading to good profits for you. So when you have both a high market share and a high market growth rate, you have what's called a star. So they have high growth, high market share, and a definite keep. They are a definite keeper. Okay. If you have high market share and low growth, you have what's called a cash cow. So they have slow growth but high market share. So they are income, finance stars, and question marks. So they are the cash cow. They are going to continually produce. If you have what's called a dog, which is a low growth rate and a low market share, you have really no competitive advantage. Frankly, should not be continuing with that product much longer. And then you have question marks. So these are risky new ventures in a high growth area that some will become dogs, some will become stars, right? So that's why we call it a question mark. Okay. And sometimes you'll see where some companies, they'll have products that go from stars, they'll transition into cash cows. Okay. It's possible to move amongst the squares on the BCG matrix. Sometimes you'll have stars that end up as dogs if the company is mismanaged enough, right? So, always, I would, tend to think about some examples, over the years that you may have, can kind of place. I think about like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has a huge market share in the beverage industry, but it's really a low growth rate. There's not a lot of new not a lot of new beverages coming to the fold, right? So cash cow is probably appropriate. However, once upon a time, they were a star. They were high growth, high market share, and a definite keeper. So they can definitely move through the matrix. All right, so the diversification strategy. So companies generally diversify to either grow revenue or reduce risk. They grow revenue because the company now has new products or services to sell. So the strategy of moving into new lines of business, such as Amazon purchasing Whole Foods or CVS buying CVS buying Atena, is called diversification. So when a company purchases a new business that is related to the company's existing business portfolio, the organization has implemented related diversification. Unrelated diversification occurs when a company acquires another company in a completely unrelated business. So think about Amazon for a minute. This might have been unrelated diversification, where they went out and bought Whole Foods, a grocery store. Okay, that'd be an example of unrelated business. Okay. However, if Netflix buys its own production company, if they're in the streaming service, that's a related diversification. Okay. They are in the same example or they're in the same industry. Organizations can also produce what's called a vertical integration. So, in vertical integration, a firm expands into business that provides the supplies it needs to make its products, or that sells or that distributes it and sells its products. Quite frankly, vertical integration is more appropriate for a Netflix example. You think about all the Netflix originals now placed on the streaming services. All of those are produced by Netflix and then are streamed on their platform. So perhaps vertical integration more appropriate for Netflix than maybe related diversification. Related diversification could be a bank acquiring another bank. They're in the same industry. Establishing business level strategies. So we've got Porter's 5 competitive forces, Porter's 4 competitive strategies, and then an executive's approach towards strategy development. So these are some 3 that we're going to kind of explore here. So with Porter's 5 competitive forces, so these were developed by Michael Porter. The 5 competitive forces can help businesses strategize based on 5 forces: threat of new entrants, bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of buyers, threat of substitute products, and then the rivalry among the competitors. And there, if you pause the video, you can see a little bit more in depth of what those 5 competitive forces are. And then we actually have a YouTube video too that you can explain that has Michael Porter explain his 5 competitive forces that I would definitely recommend that you check out. And then we have Porter's 4 competitive strategies, also called 4 generic strategies. So cost leadership. So cost leadership is to keep the costs and hence prices of a product, service of those competitors, and to target a wide market. So trying to focus on cost as your means of execution. Then differentiation strategy, offering a unique and superior value for a wide market. So this differentiation strategy is to offer products or services that are of unique and superior value compared to those of competitors, but to target a wide market. Then we have a cost focus strategy. So keeping costs and prices low for a narrow market. So cost focus is to keep the costs and then the prices of a product or service below those of the competitor to target a narrow market. So not a broad market. Okay. So thinking narrow in terms of products that can be offered. And then our last one, focused differentiation strategy. So offering a unique and superior value for a narrow market. So the focused differentiation strategy is to offer products or services that are unique and superior value compared to those of competitors to a target narrow market. All right, an executive's approach towards strategy development. So here are some questions that need to be asked. So what does the playing field look like now? So they need to understand who their competitors are, large and small. What has the competition been up to? So what's Target been up to, right? What have they been doing? What have you been up to? So for Walmart, what have we been up to? What's around the corner? Okay, so what's going to happen in the year ahead? And then ultimately, what is your winning move? So what is it that you as a manager can do going forward? So is it acquisitions? Is it a new product? Is it getting better workers? Or is it taking advantage of globalization? Okay, so there are some questions that certainly need to be answered when discussing what is your winning move. All right. And then we have strategic implementation. So with strategic implementation, taking a look at that with strategic implementation. So creating, executing, and controlling functional level strategies. And when we talk about execution, we are simply talking about getting things done. So the 3 core processes of business: people, strategy, and operations, execution roadblocks, and then maintaining strategic control. So the big picture here, strategic implementation involves executing and controlling functional level strategies. A company's overall ability to deliver results is a function of effectively executing according to the processes of people, strategy, and operations. In order for execution to be successful, managers must overcome common roadblocks. Finally, strategic control is necessary to monitor the results and make corrections if needed. All right. And then, so strategic implementation. So higher level corporate and business level strategies flow down to the functional strategy. So this is similar to cascading goals, which ensure that higher level goals are communicated and aligned in the next levels down in the organizational hierarchy. Typical functional areas include marketing, finance, human resources, operations, infotech, and distribution. Execution, getting things done. So this is a nice example here on page 231, figure 6-7. I'd encourage you to take a look at this. This is kind of that strategic implementation and execution of getting things done on the graph. And then taking a look here at our three core processes. So the first core process is people. So you need to consider who will benefit you in the future. The second core process is strategy. You need to consider how success will be accomplished. And then the third core process is operations. You need to consider what path will be followed in your organization. So as you make these execution, you make these strategies, you need to consider your three core as you go through this process. Then we have execution roadblocks. So examples, it doesn't always go smoothly. Managers may face obstacles to strategic implementation for many different reasons. So overcoming roadblocks in the C-suite, overcoming roadblocks down the hierarchy. These are some examples. C-suite executive vice presidents don't always necessarily disagree or don't always necessarily agree. And sometimes there's pushback down the hierarchy in management. So you have to be able to sort of navigate those problems as they arrive. And then maintaining strategic control. So engage people, keep it simple, stay focused, and keep moving. Okay, if you can maintain strategic control, this is probably the single best way to do so. And then to finish up here, a couple of things on the career corner, managing your career readiness. All right, and that brings us to the end of chapter 6 lecture. A few things that you need to probably keep yourself aware of. Definitely be aware of the 5 strategic steps of strategic management. Be able to apply the BCG matrix. Know Porter's 5 competitive forces and their strategies. Know what the VRIO framework is. Excuse me. Understand what growth strategies are. Definitely know the different types of diversification and integration. Understand some of the projections that we were talking about, benchmarking, contingency planning, trend analysis, scenarios, forecasting. Be able to apply a SWOT analysis. Understand, again, talking about that 5 steps of strategic management, understand, frankly, all of it, be able to apply all of it, to be honest with you. Be aware of the different types of levels of strategy within an organization. Talk about, understanding, different strategies in terms of, strategic positioning. What are some of the strategies that go along with that? Understand the BCG model, be able to apply that. I know I mentioned that already. That's probably going to be important. And then last but not least, a little nugget. Remember who bought Whole Foods. All right, that does it for chapter 6, everybody. Thank you guys. Take care. Have a great day, evening, morning, whenever it is that you're listening to this.